Good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to give it a few more moments for the other aldermen to check in with us, and then we'll get started. So let's just give it another extra 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll try and get started by about 5 after.
Hey, Trey.
Hey, Coy. Welcome. All right, everybody, it's 6:06. We're missing Mr. Howell and Raymond Hatton. So I've sent them both a message. We'll give them, hopefully they'll join us here in a bit. If they don't, then we'll get on with business and respect everybody's time. I'm going to share a screen with you. And we'll get an invocation and a roll call. All right, don't forget tonight, everybody is muted. So if you want to speak, don't forget to come off of mute. And then please place yourself back on mute just to kind of keep the conversation organized. And then tonight, to cut down on roll calls, we are going to do a voice vote as we work through an ordinance. So it'll be like it will be in live. I'm going to ask for your all in favor, speak up. Again, don't forget to take yourselves off of mute to do so. And then if you have any opposition, then it'll be by voice vote as well. Okay. All right. Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Good evening, everybody. Can y'all all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Mayor,
Here.
Mr. Philip Howell, Ms. Stewart,
Here.
Mr. Cordell,
Here.
Ms. Bridges,
Here.
Ms. Elmore,
Here.
Mr. Biles,
Here.
Mr. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Hatton, Mr. Florence,
Here.
Mr. Butler.
Here.
We have a quorum.
You're muted, Trey.
Broke the first rule of my rules here. Unmute myself. I overstepped the invocation, so what I'm going to do is back up a second and pass the floor over to Mr. Jones. Sir, if you would, please go ahead and open us up in a prayer. Appreciate it.
Let us bow. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this day that you've given us. Thank you for our mayor, Heavenly Father, who's doing everything that he can to help us be safe. Thank us for city council members, oh Heavenly Father, that we keep our faith and trust in each other to make the proper decisions. May we make those decisions based on what is needed in the city. In Christ's name we give thanks. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. All right, so we're adjourning tonight for one item on an agenda, and that is a temporary suspension of late fees, disconnections, and reconnection fees on our water, sewer, and other public services. And we do so through an ordinance because we do have an ordinance that demands that we, or that requires that the city collect these fees during normal operations. And it goes without saying that we've been in some abnormal scenarios, situations for the last 2 months, essentially, since the beginning of March. And so I think this is a topic that demands a discussion, and I think our community deserves it. And so what I've presented tonight in an ordinance has been emailed to each of you guys for review. And essentially, it covers a 60-day period from approximately the time that we started this in the beginning of March to the time end of April, which correlates with the point which most everybody should have already received a stimulus check to help in these tough times. But still, nonetheless, communities going through a hardship, and folks are having a hard time just keeping food on the table. You know, some folks have lost their jobs, and it's tough. And this is something that we have control over that I believe, as I said earlier, could provide a little bit of reprieve, and at the same time, inversely incentivize folks who may have an accumulated water bill added up to go ahead and pay that lump sum and get it out of the way without having to be penalized for it. So what I'm going to do is open up the floor for discussion. If there's any questions.
Right. Is there any way to know that all of these people have received stimulus money, or do we just assume that?
No, there's no way to know who has their stimulus fund, who's got their stimulus check yet in the mail, or if they've got it, direct deposit.
Craig,
Yes, sir.
I just had a question and a bit of concern as far as how would that affect our bond issue? And then also, would there maybe be some way that I know that I've just forgotten to pay mine bill before, and I had no problem paying the 10% charge. Just thinking there may be other people on that list that may be in the same group, and we're rewarding people that may not have the issue. I was wondering if there may be some type of way where we could, not shut off till June, and then if people needed to apply for us not to charge a service charge, perhaps they could make some application process for that.
Okay.
If I may speak to that on the bond issue, I actually spoke with Bill Spivey, who typically advises us on bond issues. We do have water and sewer bonds that are out there. And this is a concern that when we have water and sewer bonds, we have to make certain covenants with our bondholders that we won't modify our sources of payment for those bonds. Bill's opinion, though, was that this probably would not be such of a negative that it would impair our ability to pay those bonds. So he felt like, it's probably one of those things where it's not going to get us in trouble with bondholders, but we may have to report to the bondholders that we've modified our bond rates. So he basically said we can do it if we think that it's necessary and helpful, but it's not just as easy as us making the decision to modify these rates. We may have to make that notification to the bondholders. As far as the other thing on it, as far as applying for whether somebody actually needed it or not, that was something the mayor and I had discussed at one point. I drafted the ordinances based on the instructions I got from him. The thought was maybe that if people had to apply for it, if they needed it, and then, I would suggest basically approving everybody who asked for it if we got into that situation. But we didn't include that in the draft that got presented to you guys.
We did discuss the, and just for public record, late fees are 10%. So if I owe a $50 water bill and I'm late, then I'm going to owe $5 on that $50 water bill. And in lump sum for March and April, we have approximately $5,000 just over that in total sum of late fees. And so in terms of forgiveness, that's what the council is deciding on tonight. So that's the scope and scale of the late fees that we're talking about. I think I see your hand, Matt. Give me 1 second. I see. I was going to respond to something that Ginger. Oh, the subscription or the request process, I think, is a fine suggestion. The reason I didn't propose it in the email was simply because I had a discussion with Michelle and Leslie in the water office in terms of just workload and managing that. And their suggestion was that we just do kind of carte blanche across the board for everybody. But I think that's something that you guys can make a logical decision on. If you think it's in the best interest of the city for there to be an application process, then I would support it. Yes, Matt.
I was just going to say, to a fault for me personally, I'd rather err on the side of helping somebody than, getting taken advantage of. I don't feel like it's that big a sum of money, and that, if this little bit helps someone, then during this crazy time, we need to do it. That's my opinion. So, throwing it out there.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I agree with Matt, and the issue of people getting stimulus money, that would be very difficult to determine. And people that got the stimulus money, if they are in need, it's gone. Mm-hmm. There were bills to pay that hadn't already been paid. It would be an awful burden on the people in the water office to try to take applications and determine who is worthy of not having to pay a late fee. I agree with Matt. I think it's best just to do it across the board. If people have already paid late fees, then they would get a credit for it and just write it off and move on.
And so what we're talking about is strictly for the months, the billing cycles for March and April, and that accumulates to February. It's not to be confusing, but you pay February's water usage in March, you pay March's water usage in April, month ahead. So the billing cycles is what we're focused on for the months of March and April, and that's what's reflected in the ordinance as well. We do have we do have intentions of going back to a normal cutoff cycle and charging late fees as we get into May. So as it stands right now.
Just to clarify on the application process, that was just the thought to come up with to try to avoid the problem that Coy identified, that not everybody necessarily missed the payment because they were in need, but they may have just missed it because they just missed it for whatever reason. And obviously I would not want our water department people to have to shoulder the burden of deciding who's worthy and not. That's why I said, basically, if somebody asks, then they get it. But again, that's y'all's call. Y'all get to decide on this. Just the points I was researching was that it's not going to be a problem from a bond issue other than us possibly having to notify the bondholders. And number two, just being clear about exactly what fees are being forgiven, but not the whole bill itself. The principal amount of the bill is still going to be owed, just possibly not late fees.
Yes, to be very clear about that, we cannot forgive water bills. We have an obligation to collect those. And so that's not on the table for discussion. It was asked earlier, I think, by a council member, but just to be clear, water bills will not be forgiven. We're talking strictly only the late fee charges. And thanks to Ginger too. She's put a lot of work into just researching our bond obligations and talking to her network of lawyers to kind of make sure that we're making a legal and sound decision either way we go here. So I appreciate it.
It doesn't seem like a grand total, big grand total to the city, and it may not be a huge sum to an individual, at worst case. I don't know how my small family's water bill is, but, I think it's a good gesture and on the behalf of the city to show that we care and that we're trying to do what we can.
Yeah, I've got to say, I agree with Matt and Alice. I think the best thing in this unusual times, no one expected. They have children at home. I know grandparents have taken in grandchildren, and people have just had to go the extra mile to survive. And I feel in good faith, we need to release them from those late fees to help them out and to help the economy out in these difficult times.
Ginger, could I ask one question? How would we determine if we needed to notify the bondholders or not, and what type of process would that be? Would that be just a letter, or is there other accounting type work that would have to be done?
That's a good question, and Bill didn't answer that in particular. He told me to ask our accountants for it, which to me would mean basically we'd have to probably hire them as counsel to achieve that. I think it would be basically like you've seen probably, I can't remember what they call them, but accounting disclosures that you make for publicly traded companies. They're basically like press releases type things, like here's what we did, that we don't expect this to impair our ability to repay our bonds. Money wise, I don't have a problem with it. It's just, it's not as easy as just saying, let's forgive this. We have to think about all the things that go along with that. The accounting issues that the water department people are going to have to adjust every single one of these 300 and something bills downward. Any sort of notification that we have to do to the bondholders. I agree from a public standpoint that this is a nice thing to do, but let's not forget about how we actually make that done. It's not just as simple as our vote today.
Thank you.
All right, the floor is still open. If you guys have any other concerns or any other questions?
Well, if I may go in and just kind of just explain, you probably saw it in the email, but there's two versions of the ordinance that I drafted. One forgives the retroactive late fees that have been accumulated but paid during that time. The other does not. So, one of them, if there's a bill still outstanding and unpaid today that has late fees on it, those fees would be undone. The other one actually refunds back to everyone. So, on one hand, I can see the fairness of refunding back to everyone. But on the other hand, if our point is to actually benefit those that are actually in need, then the one that does not do the retroactive forgiveness would accomplish that in that it would forgive that for those that are still in need, but then not for the ones that had already paid it. But then, of course, the argument on that would be that it's not fair that the ones that paid it are not getting their money back. So that's where you guys get to make the tough calls on those.
I support the council's decision if any way you guys choose to go, but what I'm proposing is what she sent, the first bullet point, which was the version with retroactive repayment of late fees, because I really don't want to walk the line of making a decision on who deserves it, who doesn't. And so to me, I think I'm proposing that we just look at the months of May and April across the board. If you've already paid May, you get a credit. If you haven't paid yet, your late fee will be omitted. That's what I'm proposing. But again, I want this to be an item of discussion.
I agree that section 1 with the retroactive fees would be my choice. I don't think we need to determine why somebody didn't get their water bill paid on time.
Yeah, I just know there have been times when I forgot to have done it, and I would be a little embarrassed that I didn't pay my late fee if I'd forgotten one. I don't know if other people are like that.
Well, and it could be the water bill's due on the 10th. Maybe you don't get paid till the 15th. So you pay it and pay the late fee. People are late for all kinds of reasons. And I just think it's a blanket forgiveness and go on.
I'm not sure the correct procedure. Ephraim usually hands this for us, but I'd like to put version 1 of this ordinance 611 on the floor, or however we go about doing that.
That'd be a logical next step. So there's been a motion to put ordinance 764 on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made by Matt Cordell, seconded by Ephraim Jones.
We got ordinance number 764, and an ordinance to temporarily suspend the imposition of late fees, disconnections, and reconnection fees on water, sewer, and other public services bills to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 and declaring an emergency. Whereas because of public health concerns regarding the COVID-19 virus and following a declaration of national and state emergency due to the same, various measures have been put in place by the governor of the state of Arkansas to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And whereas the ability to use the city's water and sewer services is essential to prevent the spread of COVID-19 because of the need for hand washing, bathing, cleaning, and other sanitary measures. Whereas it is in the best interest of the city of Lone Oak, Arkansas to temporarily suspend the imposition of late fees, disconnections, and reconnection fees on water, sewer, and other public services collected by the municipal water works to help ensure citizens have access to clean water, sewer, and other public services during this extraordinary COVID-19 public health crisis. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Lone Oak, Arkansas, Section 1, that the 10% penalty imposed by Ordinance Number 611, Section 2, for late or non-payment of any bill for water, sewer, and other public services shall not be imposed for the bills due by March 10th, 2020 and April 10th, 2020. The 10% penalty will accrue for late payment or non-payment of water, sewer, and other public services bills due by May 10th, 2020. Any late fees that have been charged for the water, sewer, and other public services bills due March 10th, 2020 and April 10th, 2020 will be credited back to the account before the May 21st, 2020 disconnection date. Section 2, that the city will temporarily suspend disconnection of water and sewer services until May 21st, 2020, at which time all unpaid water, sewer, and other public services bills and any late fees accumulated thereon after May 11th, 2020 or thereafter, and any reconnection fees shall be paid before water and sewer services are reconnected. Section 3, in all cases, the entirety of the water, sewer, and other public services bills themselves without the late fees remain owed by the customer despite the suspension of the imposition of late fees and reconnection fees during this period of time. Section 4, the City Council of the City of Lonoke, Arkansas has determined that an emergency is found to exist in order to protect the public from unnecessary health and safety risks associated with COVID-19, and this ordinance being necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, and safety shall be in full force and effect from the date of its passage. Section 5, all ordinances or any part thereof conflicting with this ordinance are repealed to the extent of the conflict.
Thank you, Ginger. Do you have a motion to accept
Make a
the first
motion.
reading?
Make a motion to accept the first reading.
Second.
All right, motion's been made by Ephraim and seconded by Ms. Bridges. All in favor? Don't forget your mute buttons. All in favor?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I'll take a motion to suspend the rules of the second and third reading title only.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Michael Florence, seconded by Ephraim Jones.
Ordinance number 764, an ordinance to temporarily suspend the imposition of late fees, disconnections, and reconnection fees on water, sewer, and other public services bills to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 and declaring an emergency.
Motion to accept second and third reading.
Second.
All right, motion's been made to accept the second and third reading title only by Ephraim Jones and seconded by Alice Bridges. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. I'll take a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion has been made by Michael Florence and seconded by Suzette Elmore. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Motion for the emergency clause.
All right, motions, I'm assuming you're making a motion to adopt the emergency clause.
Second.
All right, motion is made by Michael Florence, seconded by Ephraim Jones. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
I'm sorry, was there somebody that did not accept the emergency clause? Okay, just making sure.
Thank you, Jerry Beth. All right, and that buttons up the session. I believe that's all we need to do for the ordinance. I appreciate your help and understanding. I know the community will too, so thank you very much. With that, I'll just end with saying hang with us. I'm working on getting information out to the community in terms of reopening dates. Believe it or not, it's as frustrating and as much of a challenge to actually reopen a city than it is to actually try and close one down. So I'm waiting until I've got a plan and structure that I sent to you guys. That's it's very soft right now, but they're dates nonetheless. I've been working with the other mayors across the county to see what they're doing and kind of see what works best for Lonoke. So I'm going to work with my city administrators on Tuesday at our staff meeting, and at that time solidify some of these dates, and I'll get those out to you guys and get a message out to the public as to what a reopening plan is going to look like for Lonoke. And I'll do my best to keep you guys informed in the process.
Well, Mr.
Other than that-
Mayor, you're always in my prayers, and I know your decisions will be the right one.
Thank you, Evan. Thanks. Other than that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Unless there's any
Second.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good night. We'll see you later.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
Mayor.
Wright.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank y'all.